Hey everyone, this is Mario again, coming at you with another movie review for Monster Fest 2012, and this time it's another double feature. And like the last one, this one is video game related, only this one is a live action one. It of course is it's a review of the 2006 horror film Silent Hill and its 2012 sequel Silent Hill Revelation. Now, unlike the last one, there's going to be a break in this review, which is going to be evident, probably because of time. The first half of the review I'm recording right now, because I just finished watching the first movie, and the second half is going to be recorded after I get back from watching the other one, because I'm going to the theater to see it in 2D, because there's only one 2D showing, and it's at 5 o'clock, and today is the only day I got over the next couple days to do it, because we're not doing anything. Tomorrow I have to go see a play that I have to see for my acting class, and then the next couple days I got school and other stuff to do. But anyway, how I heard about this film originally is, you know, all the trailers when this movie first came out, and of course people talking about saying, it's an okay film, it's a bad film, stuff like that. People were mixed on it. And as you all know, how I was introduced to the Silent Hill games is my brother had the first game, and I borrowed it once and I played it, and I got stuck. I guess because I was expecting the game kind of in the same vibe as Resident Evil, and that's not what I got. And then, of course, recently, you know, I replayed some of the games. I mean, I played the Homecoming, I think it was. I'm checking, I think it's Homecoming. Downpour, excuse me. Downpour. But I did see Homecoming played, and of course I played the second game. As you guys know, I have the Let's Play that's going on currently that I will continue once I get my hands on that game, because I only rented it. And I decided to give this film a watch, because I know fans are kind of mixed on it. I mean, on IMDb right now it has a 6.5, and Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it a 29%, which I can expect that from critics, because as I'm watching the movie I was thinking, this is not a movie that I think that many critics would like. Some might like it, but some might not. And it has a 65% with the audience, so it's more or less 6 out of every 10 people are going to like it. That's just based on that score. Might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less, but me, for what the movie is, I enjoyed it, because from what little I know about the Silent Hill series, they're basically, each game, from what I understand, is loosely connected. It's not like Resident Evil, where they have a core set of characters that, like, oh, this game, the main character is going to be Chris, this game is going to be Leon, this game is going to be Claire. It's not like this. Or this one's going to be Claire and Chris. Ada, stuff like that. It's not like that. It's different. And I know that they like have multiple endings, some joke endings, some serious, some downbeat. So it is kind of a hard game to do a movie adaptation of. And after seeing the movie, I think that they decided to, with the movie, to not try to adapt one of the game stories specifically. They decided to just look at the core concept of the series and try to adapt that to a movie. And with that, I believe they succeeded for the most part. Because it's not like with the Resident Evil live-action movies, where only the first movie captures the core concept of the series, and then the rest of it... As you guys can already tell, I think this movie is way better than a majority of the Resident Evil live-action movies. I'm not sure... I have to watch the first one again, but I think that it's... The first live-action Resident Evil movie and this movie... Maybe this one's a little bit better, because it doesn't give that much of a middle finger to the audience, because it does have some stuff that people would expect in it. Now, one thing that is kind of evident from what I understand is that the main character of this movie is a female. And from what I understand, only one of the games has a female lead, and that's the third game, which is what the new movie is based off of, so you would expect the new movie to have a female lead. But this one, it's kind of odd that they went with a female, which is kind of a cliche in horror movies now, that it's always a female. I mean, I can hardly think of any horror movies that have just a main male lead. I mean, Jason Goes to Hell is one. Night of the Living Dead, both the original and the remake, they have a male lead. He does a little bit more in the original, though, because Barbara being catatonic. But most of the horror movies coming to mind have a female lead. Most of the Friday the 13th movies. A majority of the Nightmare movies, except for Part 2, but people usually crap on Part 2. The only other ones coming to mind are... action horror, you know, like Predator and Alien, but Aliens is more action horror, but Alien also has a female lead, so I think they just decided to do that just for simplicity's sake. But anyway, the movie is directed by Christophe Gans, which I want to see real quickly what else this guy has directed. Okay, then I gotta open a page for him because he doesn't have it at the bottom. I've never really heard of this guy, but the names, or at least that I could think of, but the name sounds vaguely familiar. Okay, he directed a movie in 2001 called Brotherhood of the Wolf. I'm checking to see what that is, because... Oh yeah, that's a movie I've been meaning to see, and that's that movie loosely based off the Beast of Jevedon. I've been meaning to see that. That was a movie he directed before this, and then apparently he's attached to an Onimusha movie, which might be good. I have to say, as a director, he was pretty good with this. I mean, as video game ones go, I'll say he directed this movie a lot better than Anderson has directed any of the Resident Evil movies. I'll tell you that. He actually got believable performances out of the actors. And our actors, we got Radha Mitchell, who plays our lead character Rose, who is a mother. Let's see what she's been in real quick. Okay, that explains why I had trouble pronouncing her name. Her first name, it's Hindu. Let's see. Oh, she was in Pitch Black. Phone Booth, Man on Fire, Finding Neverland. Maybe that's what I recognize her from. Mozart and the Whale. Surrogates. She's going to be in the new movie about the new Silent Hill movie as well. And she was in The Crazies, huh? Nothing that I've actually fully seen, so maybe I only loosely recognize it from trailers. Then we got Sean Bean as her husband, which of course I recognize Sean Bean. I'm sure I recognize him, of course, from Lord of the Rings, where he played Boromir, and then he's, of course, the Game of Thrones one. But it's kind of nice to see him in here, even though he plays like I wouldn't say he plays a minor role compared to some of the Radha's character, but he's basically like a side main character because he's mostly in the real world. And of course, Laurie Holden plays a motorcycle cop, which I believe is based off a character from the first game. She does a pretty good job. Then we got Deborah Unger, who I want to see if she's related to that one Unger, if you guys know, because that's a weird last name. I want to see if she's related to that other Unger real quick. Yeah, for guy's first name, it escaped me. You guys should know. Guy from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Doesn't say anything. Probably just a coincidence. Anyway, she plays this one woman who walks throughout Silent Hill, looking for her daughter. Then we got Kim Coates, who plays Officer Gucci, who is a cop that knows about Silent Hill, that basically is talking with Sean Bean's character. And of course, we got Tanya Allen as Anna, which I believe is the daughter. No, Sharon is the daughter. Excuse me, Anna must be the other girl. Jodelle Ferland plays their daughter. She does a pretty good job, even though she's only in a few scenes in the movie. And then, of course, even though he's hardly in the movie, we got Roberto Campanella as Pyramid Head. And I've only seen Pyramid Head loosely in the games, but he did a pretty good job capturing the character's physicality. Now, on to the plot. Our plot is that we got Rose and her husband. They are concerned about their adoptive daughter, Sharon, who has been sleepwalking while calling out the name of a town called Silent Hill. Desperate for answers, Rose decides to take her there. And, of course, as you all know, taking someone to Silent Hill is never a good idea. As they approach town, she is pursued by a police officer, and they decide to run, and a child appears in the road, causing Rose to crash, knocking herself unconscious. When she awakens, she finds her daughter's missing, and the fog is clearing around the town. That part of the story I recognize from the first game, so I do know a little bit. So for the first act of the movie and leading a little bit into the second act, I kind of got where they were taking the story from, which is, well, I could see why some people would complain about it, considering it's a man in the game. So I've already explained probably why they changed it. So the majority of the movie is Rose wandering throughout Silent Hill, looking for her daughter and encountering monsters, people that also live in the town that seem weird. Like, we got this weird religious cult that's there, which the moment I saw that, I say they're gonna have an impact on the plot of the movie up until the climax, I bet. And I was right. I'm not gonna spoil how, but I was right. And of course, she teams up with the cop after a rocky start. You know, you're under arrest. Not with that accent, but I think you get it. And while they're dealing with Silent Hill, her husband is in the real world trying to find her. And there's a weird thing where this kind of layer shows the different layers. Like, there's two different layers in Silent Hill. There's a real world layer, and there's the Silent Hill weird layer. And inside that layer, weird stuff happens with something they call the Dark, which I don't know if this is original to the movie or not, but it kind of feels like it is, because the only closest thing I saw to this in any of the game stuff I saw was in Silent Hill Downpour, where this thing that's like a black hole chases you in a couple scenes. But maybe they decided to use something in the movie in the game, because we all know Resident Evil did that a couple times. But that's about probably all the plot I'm going to go into. But I have to say, Bean's character, what he does, trying to find his wife and daughter, all the lengths he goes to up until the cops force him out of town. I have to say, I would probably do the same thing if my wife and daughter were missing and everyone seemed to be giving me the runaround. I would probably be harassing the nun too. I probably would have broken and entered into that building too, trying to find out what the heck happened and why there seems to be a cover-up going on. And Rose, I really do buy Radha and her role as a mother trying to find her daughter. She is very believable in it, and you could tell she really wants to find Sharon and really wants to deal with all the crap going on around her, and you buy that she's legitimately freaked out about the stuff that goes on. Now, the world of Silent Hill, it's practical to an extent, but all the weird stuff, like the weird creatures and stuff, it's mostly CGI. I think Pyramid Head's the only practical one. The nurse creatures that I believe are in Silent Hill 2, but I could be mistaken. They kind of look like they might be a combination, but it's kind of hard to tell because of the lighting. But I know, like, the bugs and some other stuff, like, are CGI, but I don't mind it because, like, the weird creatures that move at weird angles and stuff, that would be kind of hard to do practical so that being CGI, I don't mind. But Pyramid Head being practical, I will applaud him for that, because Pyramid Head being CGI would have been kind of hard to buy. The head was kind of hard to tell if it was practical, but I think it might have been practical with a little bit of touch of CGI, but then again, I might have to watch the movie and pause and really look at it, because I really wasn't paying attention to what type of effect his head was when I noticed that the body itself was practical to an extent. There are a couple shots that look like it was amplified with CGI, but I have to watch the behind the scenes thing, because maybe it was capture mode, motion capture with some stuff. Maybe they did it like how they did Two-Face in Dark Knight. I almost said Dark Knight Rises. Excuse me. Dark Knight. He only was a photograph in Dark Knight Rises. Now, the flashbacks of how they explain the history of the town, I didn't mind it, and I actually do like how they wait until the end of the movie to fully explain what the heck happened. Actually, bringing a coal fire into Silent Hill, I liked. I don't know if the games do that, but I know the town it's supposedly based on, at least from the looks of things, had a coal fire. So bringing that into the story is kind of interesting. And like I mentioned before, a lot of critics didn't really like it, and mostly it's because of how the story is brought out. But I don't mind that. I think it's interesting, actually. I don't know if the games, for the most part, do similar stuff to it, because I've never played the games all the way through, but I thought it was interesting. But after watching the movie, I could see why fans would be mixed on it. Like, I don't remember correctly, but I think Matt's not a fan of the movie or something. Matt, if you're watching this, tell me what you think of the movie, because I don't remember off the top of my head. I know you hate with a passion the Resident Evil movies, or at least the more recent ones. With quarter shooting shotguns, I don't blame you, because that's not scary. That's retarded. But anyway, this movie, I would recommend you people would give it a watch, even if it's just one watch, just to see what the movie's about or something. I will say the games seem to, even though I hardly play them, they seem far better, but that's usually the case because it's kind of hard to adapt video games, especially one like this. But one thing I thought would have been creative if they did it is if they actually went with multiple endings, like what they did with the Clue movie. That would have been interesting. Each theater get a different ending, and then on the DVD you get to select which ending you want to see. That would have been interesting. But if they do that with the second movie, that'd be cool. But from what I hear, I doubt they did. But if they do a third movie, I want to see them do that. Like maybe a joke ending. You have to admit, that would be a funny way to end a Silent Hill movie with one of the joke endings, like the aliens coming in out of nowhere who come to steal your beer. But with the ending, I'm not going to say what it is, but I thought it was interesting. I mean, it's downbeat and happy at the same time, I thought. And I'm not going to elaborate on that, but that's just what it is. And I wonder if they're going to touch on it in the sequel, because like I mentioned, the characters are in it. Anyway, my rating for Silent Hill, I'd say 4 out of 5. Well, guys, I'm back. It was around a little after 3 when I recorded the first part of the review, and it's now at 8. Been home a little over an hour. Just wanted to let the film digest a little bit in my head, plus riding, getting gas before I did the review. And as proof that I actually saw it in the theater, in case someone wants to know, here's my ticket. Silent Hill. Right there, 5 o'clock. Only 2D showing. Which I will say, just based on the fact I saw the 2D version, I will say I could see how 3D might work a little bit. I mean, there was hardly any shots I knew that were obvious 3D ones where you're like, ah, that's catering to 3D. Most of it looked like it had been subtle, like some of the shots of the environment and stuff. Now, anyway, when I first heard about this film, I wondered if it was going to be a loose sequel to the previous film, or if it was actually going to be a direct sequel. And off the bat, I'll tell you it is a direct sequel. I guess it's kind of like, since they're doing it kind of like similar to how the games did it, only not with how the games went. They had the first game, then the second game was related to the first game because of Silent Hill, but other than that, nothing except for one of the endings. And then the third game being a direct sequel to the first game. That's what they're going like with this. And I actually did a little bit of research into the history of the plot, and I found out that I did not know this, but apparently the first game does have a cult, or at least according to what I've read, so I guess that explains it, and I guess that explains why they're carrying it over into this. But anyway, first of all, Silent Hill Revelations is directed by Michael J. Bassett. That's right, Bassett. I can't help but think of Tremors when I hear that name. Anyway, he's directed a few movies before. He directed a movie in 2002 called Death Watch. I'm checking to see what that was about. Oh, it's a war movie. No names I recognize or anything. It was released by Lionsgate. And he followed it up with a movie called Wilderness, which was in 2006, which was a British-Irish horror movie. Looks interesting. And then in 2009 he did a movie called Solomon Kane, which is based on the Pulp Fiction character of the same name in the movie, and Max von Sydow in it. And then, of course, this is his 4th movie. So he's a director that has experience. So I could tell from that and how he actually held the camera. He didn't like do quick cuts. He actually kept the camera steady. So it's a director that actually knows what he's doing. So I will applaud them for getting a director that actually knows what the heck he's doing, instead of one that's kind of like, good old Samuel Bayer. But part of it ironically, one of the shots he did kind of reminded me of one Samuel Bayer did, only it looked less like a music video, it looked more like he was setting up the environment of Silent Hill. Anyway, it's written by him as well, so, he did pretty good. He did an okay job with the screenplay, I will say. I guess, I don't know if he allowed the actors to ad-lib a little bit, but I'll just say. The film stars... I'm going to have trouble with this first name, okay? Adelaide. It's Agelaide. Adelaide, I guess. Adelaide Clemens plays our lead character, Heather, which she's one of the connections to the previous movie, which I will address when I get to the synopsis. Then we got Kit Harrigan playing Vincent, who I found out is a character from the game, though they modify him slightly. Then we got Carrie-Anne Moss as Claudia Wolf, which... I'm going to check to see why I recognize the name Carrie-Anne Moss. I'm just making sure. Oh, that's why. It's Trinity from the Matrix trilogy. That's how I knew that name. Also in Red Planet. And wondering, she plays the main villain of the movie, but she has a lot of skin makeup and stuff, so it's kind of hard to see her. But I knew she looked for a little bit familiar even under that. Then, of course, Sean Bean returns as his character. And, of course, this is probably the cameo that probably surprised me the most out of the whole movie. I did not expect to see this actor in the movie. Malcolm freaking McDowell. That is right. Malcolm McDowell is in a Silent Hill movie. He's a minor character. He's only in one scene. And the moment I saw him, I'm like, Malcolm McDowell. And his performance, he's slightly over the top, but it's the good way because he's supposed to be insane. And also he's blind, so he has to act more with his voice. And it also fits him because he's kind of taunting while he's insane and stuff. And it fits. Probably one of the better performances in the movie, even though it's a minor one. Not to take away from them, but he is the most experienced actor in the movie, probably. Isn't that right, my droogie droogs? Then we got Peter Outbridge as Travis Grandy, who I believe is a minor character. Then, of course, Radha Mitchell has a small minor cameo as a character from the first movie, Rose, but it's a very small one. As does Deborah Unger as Dahlia. And then, of course, Roberto returns as Pyramid Head. But I was actually surprised at something involving him, but I'm not going to spoil that. Anyway, the first big thing I will mention is that the way it is a direct sequel to the original film is that the fact that Sean Bean, who played, Christopher in the first movie, he still is Christopher in this movie. Harry Mason, the character from the first game and from the third game, who disappears in the third game, is an assumed name of his. So that's how they work. That's how they're working in some elements from the third game into this. Harry is his assumed name. Heather Mason is Sharon's assumed name. That's not given away in the trailers. I know that's a minor spoiler, but I have to address it in order to talk about the synopsis of this film, or else someone's going to say, how's this connected to the previous film then? And I had a feeling, I actually wondered how they were going to do that, and I have to say that's probably the best possible way they can do it. And it works, because we can with the cult, we can understand eventually why Chris would probably change his name, but Heather, she barely had a character in the first movie. In the first movie, she was basically a MacGuffin, basically driving her mother to do what she did. In this movie, she's actually a full-fledged character, and she's actually the protagonist now. And of course, I'm not going to explain how. I'm not going to talk about the ending of the first movie, obviously, because this review is connected with it. But those of you who've seen the first movie, they do actually explain how Heather, I'm calling her Heather just for the heck of it, how she got out of Silent Hill. They do explain it. Because I mentioned how the ending of the first movie, it is kind of downbeat yet upbeat at the same time. Well, this one explains how she gets out, and also it explains pretty quickly why she and her father have assumed names. Well, I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm just going to say it involves the cult and them wanting to get her. And it does involve the demon thing from the first movie, but they elaborate a lot more on it. But anyway, as the movie begins, Harry and Heather have just moved to a new town and they're starting it. And you can tell that Heather does not really like it when they move constantly, and she doesn't like making friends, as she does in her little speech telling them, I don't like you about Facebook, I'm not going to tweet you and stuff like that. It's a big good speech, probably one of my favorite lines she says in the whole movie. And then of course another kid, Vincent's also new that day, and then he says a pretty funny line. Come on, I can't solve that. I know I'm not saying her right, but the way he says it, got a good chuckle out of me. I mean, I will say there was hardly people in the theater. Like, there was 2 people in the row in front of me off to the side, and then a couple other people down in front and a couple in the back. But I could see why. Most of them probably went to see the 3D one. But anyway, back to the synopsis. Heather eventually gets a feeling someone's following her, and she finds out that the cult somehow hired this guy to find them, and he finally figured out who they were, and he came to warn her. He gets killed. And then, of course, Heather's father gets kidnapped, and they're saying, and on the wall is written a message telling her to go to Silent Hill. And, of course, her father had left a note in a box telling her, in case that she was ever kidnapped, not to go to Silent Hill because bad things will happen there, and it's what they want. But she ignores this and goes to Silent Hill. She gets there. We find out something about Vincent. Apparently, in the game, he is a bad guy of sorts. In this one, he's kind of a flipping character. I'm not going to spoil how, but I did actually like it. I actually didn't suspect this about his character at first. But then the moment I saw it, I'm like, okay, he's probably going to be a flip character. And, of course, Heather has to find this amulet that she has half of, which is connected to how she escaped. And she has to confront the evil part of her. Because if those of you who've seen the first movie, you remember the whole thing about the character that was burned that caused the curse of Silent Hill, and how it's connected to Heather and her then person and stuff. So it is a direct sequel, taking elements from the third game. And of course, apparently, they didn't really it was kind of hard to catch this, but apparently our main villain is the sister of the woman that was in charge of the cult in the first movie, and it makes you wonder, hey, didn't they kill all the cultists in the first movie? Then again, a line Malcolm McDowell says probably could answer why that there's more cultists, because when she asks him about Silent Hill, it's like, there's many Silent Hills, so I'm guessing that there's layers of, since he's talking about layers of dimensions or something, that there's multiple Silent Hills. And maybe that's the reason why in the game universe there are people who keep getting lost in Silent Hill, never running into the other people, and it always is changing. Maybe that's the reason why. The game's probably never going to elaborate on it, but it's something to think about. So the writers at least acknowledge the fact that the cultists did die, even if subtly. But so I'm guessing that maybe some cultists survived, or it's different people. But they do mention that these are the last, that the place that they're at is the last sanctuary against the darkness or something. And the darkness does move like it does in the first movie, kind of reminding me of that black hole thing from the newest Silent Hill game. Pyramid Head has a couple scenes, and like I mentioned before, something about his character surprised me at the end. But then again, after what had just happened beforehand, it shouldn't surprise me. And like I mentioned before, Heather does eventually have to confront the evil of her other self, and I'm not going to spoil what happens, but it kind of reminded me of a scene from Star Wars. You know, that scene in Empire Strikes Back where Luke has to go into the cave and he faces the Darth Vader thing that turns out to have his face. Which, of course, you all know that's a foreshadowing of the end of the movie, but it's also one of the Jedi trials. It's the trial of the mirror, where you're basically facing the dark side of yourself. Which, ironically, we did incorporate that into LARP, because one of my buddies, during a training thing for to go up one level higher in Magic, one of the things he had to do was face a version of himself. And they also incorporated that into Zelda 2 with Dark Link, so I like it when they do that. And it's kind of fitting for that scene that that Adiladi is also playing the other character. Or at least I think it is, because, or maybe it is Deborah and they just digitally altered her to make her resemble Heather a little bit, but that's just my guess. And the music was kind of fitting for it. I mean, I like the ending theme song, which I actually want to find out what the ending theme song is. It doesn't say what it is on the Wikipedia page, but maybe eventually it will. Hasn't really made that much money, so according to Wikipedia it's made almost $4 million. So for an opening weekend that's kind of minor, but it only costs $20, so I have a feeling by the end of its theatrical run it'll probably at least break even. And then again, that's just a statement. It could have made more without me knowing. I mean, this is only the second day it's been out, I believe. Let me check. Yeah, this is only the second day it's been out, so can't really say it's been a flop so far, but feeling it'll probably make some money. And I hope Resident Evil doesn't steal all of it, because I will say both this and its predecessor are miles better than the last few Resident Evil movies, the live action ones. And I have a feeling, it's a little short to say, but I think I actually might like both Silent Hills better than Resident Evil, the 2002 film. But we'll just see that after I rewatch those films. But I will say one thing, at least with this, Michael Bassett right now seems to be a more competent director than Wild Stallions is right now. Because we all know because at least he's putting people in the movie that actually audition. He's not putting his wife in the movie just so she can be the star. I know someone's going to say, I know people are going to say, but Helena Bonham Carter's in all of Tim Burton's movies. Granted, she is his domestic partner, but she at least can act. Well, okay, is that a Byrne thing? Yeah, I know I mentioned that a couple times before, but it's the truth. Trying to think of what else about this movie I can say. I like the cinematography, as I could say. Yeah, the acting, like I mentioned, Malcolm McDowell, one of the better performances in it, despite his short period. Sean Bean, excuse me. Yeah, it'd be weird if Michael Bean came into this movie. Die, Pyramid Head! Sean Bean, I have to say, acting-wise, he's better at the beginning of the movie and the very end of the movie. In the middle of the movie, he's just okay, but then again, there's not much material to work with. During the middle of the movie, most of the time we see him, he barely has any lines. He's just mostly sitting here with his hands tied like this and just sitting there, like trying to look like he's in a little bit of pain and he's angry. But at the beginning of the movie, I did like him. I did buy him as a father who's grown with a teenage daughter while being on the run. And the little flashback scene showing one of the reasons they're on the run, I liked him in that. And the guy that played Vincent, I think the main reason he's in the movie could be because of Sean Bean, because they're both in A Game of Thrones, but Kid actually did a pretty good job. I mean, if I knew people it'd be an acting role I would like to have tried, but never know. Now, Adela, for the most part, she at least is believable in the role. There's a couple minor parts where her acting slips a little bit, but for the most part, she was believable. Nothing Oscar-worthy from her, but, you know, pretty good. I mean, this was only her second lead role, and she actually does look the part, because I have seen enough fan art of Heather to know how she's supposed to look and act, so I bought her there. Kit is Vincent. I'm not familiar with the character, so I can't really say anything, but from what I know, the character is like loosely based on the character, but he did a pretty good job. The rest of the characters, they were there, I guess. Like Carrie-Anne Moss, like I said, was pretty good as a villain. Not as good as the girl from the first movie, who their characters are supposed to be sisters, or at least that's what I'm guessing just from what they loosely state. They never say anything, but it's hard to tell because the Silent Hill continuity, at least with the town, is not supposed to make sense. Outside of the world, I can make sense in this movies. I can make sense of the continuity, but inside the world, it's kind of hard to. Which that's the reason that a lot of the critics seem to be panning this movie. And with that, I just facepalm it. I'm like, are you guys familiar with the games? There doesn't really seem to be much continuity inside of the Silent Hill portion of the world, so that's kind of a stupid gripe, at least in my opinion. And of course, last time it only has a 7% with the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, but it has like a 50-something with fans, and it has a 7.1 on IMDb, and I have to say it deserves that mark, because I like this movie a little bit more than its predecessor, and I will say it has a faster pace, because I think the first movie was around 2 hours, a little over 2 hours. This movie's only about 90-something minutes, so if you were a minor fan of the first movie because of running time or something, but thought it ran a little bit too long, you'll probably enjoy this one more because of the running time. And I could see why, because the first movie had to establish all the characters, they had to set up this whole big elaborate thing. This one, it spends the first half of the movie setting up the characters, you know, setting up why Heather and her father are running, you know, setting up her why she's going to go to Silent Hill, why she decides to go there. Then when she's in Silent Hill, the plot starts moving forward very quickly, very quickly. The first part is the slowest part of the movie, but even that moves at a pretty good speed, especially in comparison to the previous film. And my rating for Silent Hill Revelations, though I like it a little bit more than the first one, I'd probably have to say 4.5 out of 5, because I like it better than the first one. The first one I rated 4 out of 5, so maybe I'd have to say 4.5 out of 5. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the effects. I did notice a lot of practical effects in the movie. I did notice some CGI, but the CGI seemed to be done better than his previous film. 6 years have passed, so it better be. But I did like that they combined practical and CGI and only used CGI where it would be kind of hard to use practical effects. So I applaud the movie for that as well. Other films should take notes from this movie. And the funny thing is, this movie accomplished a lot, and it only cost $20 million. Shows that Hollywood should watch how to spend money.